Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Seven, live from Jerusalem with Rabbi Aaron Dovid Poston, who has been teaching us so many different elements that B'nai Noah can integrate into their lives and put into everyday practice. He's been going over the beautiful must-hear series, the 48 Ways to Wisdom, and today we've got part 44. It's been over a year of a journey in this series, but it is something so important. I highly encourage every B'nai Noach to re-listen to every one of these episodes and acquire each one of those steps to wisdom. They're so useful, so necessary to understand the principle of what wisdom is and how to actually integrate it, acquire it, and to put it into practice. So useful. I'm so thankful that Rabbi Poston stays up late in Jerusalem to share this beautiful series with us. So let's just jump right in and see how the rabbi's doing today. Rabbi Poston, always good to be with you, sir. I hope your Yiboneh end of the year campaign is going well.
Thank you. Yeah, we're halfway there, and we have a few days left. So, Bezrat Hashem. Whatever people give will help us continue to output. Continue to give and to reach out. So. We're just happy for all those that have given and anybody who's thinking about it, and continue to think about it for the next few days anyway. Anyway, thank you so much, Dan, for having me on and actually, initiating and asking me to do this series, which we started a long time ago on Beyond the Seven. And we started off with like a very good, let's just say, background to what it means, the 7 Noahide laws for Gentiles. For all humanity, and we went into the 6 constant mitzvahs, and then we decided to do this book over my left shoulder, based on the 6th chapter, the 6th Mishnah of the 6th chapter in Pirkei Avot, the 48 Ways to Wisdom. Now, interestingly enough, because the idea is called kinyan, to acquire wisdom, right. And today's topic, number 44, is in Hebrew, shoel umeshiv, which means to ask and to respond, to answer. But it's more than that. It's hopefully understanding how important it is to ask the question to begin with, to analyze. That's going to be the title, Analyzing the Issues. I mean, it's unbelievable. Today we live in a society where we're just fed information.
Yeah, no critical thought.
We're not even thinking about it. In fact, we're just parroting, regurgitating, if that's an okay word to use. Information because we like the speaker or we're relying on the speaker. Now, again, we're not all expected to become experts in every area of life, but we are expected to think, to use our brains, our noggin, our seichel. And
given it for a reason, yeah.
If there's anything the Gentiles can learn from the Jews is so many things. The list is amazing. But one of them, I think that would be undisputable is the critical thinking, as you said, how to think critically and to analyze things. Look, I mean, whether they're accountants or lawyers, I mean, Jews have quite a reputation for critical thinking, and hopefully this will.
Many Nobel laureates, yes.
Okay, so let's, on one level, you're talking about external information, about science, but a lot of this, the exercise, the ability to analyze something should help you in your life, right? I can go through, just a list. I mean, just to start off, why shouldn't somebody ask this question? But you know what? I like to jump around, and I want to try to keep it as misudar as possible. Let's stick with the framework the Rosh Yeshiva starts with. First of all, nobody ever died from asking a question. Now, I hope I could say that in the year 2022. I don't know the way the world's going, right? There are people that are censored and, let's say, even murdered.
Cancel culture, yeah.
Cancel culture. Not physically murdered, but basically their livelihood has been taken away because they ask questions. So this is it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy that people cannot ask questions. But we have to learn. You know what? There's more important things, and to know the truth, to arrive at the truth.
How to learn.
I feel like I have to skip around just to give you an idea. But number one, right? The Jewish ritual. I'll call it a ritual called the Passover Seder, right? Everyone knows. Well, everyone knows it happens once a year, and it's a central theme in Judaism that we remember, we recall, we relive the experience of leaving the land of Egypt. This is where our identity as a national identity sprang forth. But it's also an individual identity in terms of our relationship with the creator of the universe. The one, right? It says in the first of the Ten Commandments, if anybody knows it by heart, right? I am the Lord your God. Okay, so you have to know there's one God, but it continues. I'm the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. Okay, so it doesn't say I'm the Lord your God who created the universe, right? It's a personal relationship. When one leaves bondage, when one leaves, whether it's addiction, whether it's troubles, constricted periods in their life where things are troublesome, rocky, what do you call those waters? Troubled waters, right? There's a song about leaving, troubled waters. Anyway, So every human being has experienced this on one level or another more than once in their lifetime. So it's about a personal relationship with God, as we left you. Anyway, my point was this. During this Seder, during this ritual, seeming ritual, right? What is done, there are the 4 questions. It's the central theme of the night, to ask as many questions as possible. So this is one of the things that hopefully the Jewish people have brought to the world, right? Abraham, who not just discovered and realized, but then spread the message. He carried the message, and 3/4 of the globe believes in what I hope they do anyway. Maybe we're all full. Almighty. That there is a creator of the universe, and that the Torah is true. Whether the Muslims believe it was corrupted, or whether the Christians believe that there's a replacement, whatever it is, they all seem to believe there was historical facts that took place, called the Revelation of Mel Sinai. Okay, so this is very important for us, that we should ask questions, and nobody ever died. I'm going to say it again. I mean, whether it's still true or not, we'd like to believe that nobody ever died from asking a question. So I want to go just into one more idea, like, how do I know God exists? And you know what? What if he does? What if he doesn't? Does it make a difference in my life? I mean, how can nobody ask that question to themselves? Seriously, right? And if God does exist, and the 3/4 of the globe somehow believe in this, I'll call it a revelation, but we're going to talk about the transmission of this information called the Torah that happened 3,300 years ago. Was it God that gave it, or was it written by humans? I mean, all these questions have to be asked, because the next question is, does it make a difference in my life? Like, does it really make a difference? And you're going to have to answer that question. Nobody's going to answer it for you, right? Another question one has to ask is, how do I fulfill my potential? Like, who am I? Where do I fit in the world? And what about free will? If God controls everything, then what? If free will exists, what is the limitations, or where do the bounds begin and where do they end in terms of my own personal free will? Another idea one should ask themselves, hopefully, right? They take a cheshbon hanefesh. They're constantly, hopefully, reviewing their day, reviewing their relationships, reviewing the consequences of what happened through the day. How do I avoid making the same mistakes? If you're not thinking critically, guaranteed you're going to make the same mistakes again, right? Okay, so let's start a little bit. We discussed this idea. Maybe you've heard of Hillel, Beis Hillel, and Beis Shammai. How is it that the Jewish people, even though there are disputes among the earlier rabbis, and we say they're all true statements, but we end up through the Sanhedrin going after the majority, how is it that we can make that? Well, the Torah itself says to follow the majority, okay? But why did Why did Hillel become the majority? Number one, maybe they were nicer, maybe, right? Maybe they were sweeter. The truth is like this. They had more students. What made them have more students? Perhaps that's the answer. You have to think analytically. So, or maybe they just had better answers. Well, we say not like that. The truth is, it could be that Shammai had better or sharper answers.
In some
But
respects.
what they did was they always presented the other side of any argument first in order to analyze it. And therefore, if they agreed with it, they would took back their argument and stuck with the truth because they analyzed it and came out to the truth. But the main thing was they were willing to hear and analyze and have a discussion with the other side.
They deliberated, yes.
So even till today, I mean, when I say till today, because we're talking about over 2,000 years, when Hillel and Shammai lived, before the writing of the Talmud, before the writing of the Mishnah, that Rabbi, who compiled the Mishnah, always put Shammai's opinion first. So even he is part of the Hillel establishment, part of the tribe of Yehuda. Anyway, when he canonized, let's say, what we call the Oral Torah, he always put Beit Shammai first as a consistent with his own great-great-grandpappy's ideas. So this is very important in terms of analyzing. Be open and willing. Go out of the box. Don't just keep hearing all the information that you're used to and that you agree with. Try to hear the other side. Okay. So that would really be the main reason. Obviously, he became the rove, the majority, because he was, let's say, when you hear all the different stories between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, it seems, I'm using the word seems in apostrophes, that he was kinder, but it was really because of his humility. Okay, the kindness came out because of his humility, that he was willing to lower his own ego and try to get to the truth. That's the only way you're going to get to the truth, if you work on deflating your ego. Let's see. So this idea of analyzing issues, we call it shoel umeshiv. Now there's two ways to look at this, because it really means to ask and to answer. So I want to read something from a sefer. It's in Hebrew. I'll do my best to translate it in a cohesive fashion. This is the Mishnah on Pirkei Avot, chapter 6. A Mishnah 6 that mentions the words shoel umeshiv, and this is metifta. This is a commentary, and just discusses this idea. What does it mean? That the person is awakening within themselves to ask the question on whatever he's learning. In other words, it's very nice. And maybe you have to go to a lot of classes, and maybe you have to sit with big rabbis, with deep thinkers, how to even ask the questions. I mentioned that when I was already religious a few years and I was in yeshiva as an adult, I continued to go to the beginners classes, classes that were set up to explain Judaism to the brand new beginner. Now, I was already a believer, but you know what? You have to be able to crystallize, to really concretize your own thoughts if you ever want to be a teacher, for sure. So the reason I went was not because I needed a refresher on the information. The reason I went was I wanted to hear the questions of someone who was coming in, and I'm not saying blind, just fresh, coming in without any preconditions, right? They were really questioning and searching, and this is what, as someone who maybe claimed I'm already, drank the Kool-Aid, right? Well, guess what? I want to make sure that it's crystal clear to me, and whatever question they're going to ask is going to be very important for me, for now and for the future. Beautiful. So I was afraid for myself that I was missing the questions. I want to make sure that those questions are fresh on my mind so I can hear them over and over and over again. Okay. And after you do that, the awakening of the questions, then you do everything you can to attempt to seek out, to search out the answers. And through this, you'll have crystal clear clarity, hopefully, right? You'll understand whatever it is you're trying to understand much better. And that's how it's summed up. But there's a footnote to that. And the footnote explains there's actually two sides to this idea. So what does it mean to she'el umeshiv, to ask and to answer? So it says like this. So I want to read to you. I'm going to go through this Gemara in Sanhedrin in a second. But what it's going to deal with in Sanhedrin is when you have 71 sages and a capital crime, meaning a death penalty. A possible death penalty is what do you call it? It's hanging over, right? The litigant, and if everyone, meaning it's unanimous, that the person is guilty, what happens? Then he's let free. He's acquitted. And we're going to have to discuss why is that. So things like that disturbed me. When I heard that in Judaism, I said, look, this guy is obviously guilty. If everyone on the Sanhedrin says he's guilty, why are you going to let a serial killer or somebody like that go? Right? He committed murder, he committed rape, or he did something that, that certain types of rape that are, the death penalty.
Yeah.
Okay, so it didn't make any sense to me, and you have to ask the question why. All right, we're gonna analyze it a little bit. So I'll just read the words. So if the Sanhedrin, the entire Sanhedrin, agrees that the person should be killed, the answer is that he's not killed. After the fact, the truth is that there must be somebody from amongst the judges who didn't inquire, who didn't ask the right questions. Okay, we have to find out what's going on here.
They bit on the lure of the narrative.
So there is to be concerned and to worry that they didn't clarify the Indian completely. There was something lacking in their investigation, right? Okay, fine. However, there's another way to look at these words, which we're not going to really follow this other idea. It's a minority opinion, but it's okay. I want people to know the other idea, is that so if a person goes ahead and asks a certain question that he's dealing with, like at the moment, and he doesn't deal with both sides of the issue. I'm sorry. So it's more like this. So if you're dealing with a particular issue, and you should be hyper-focused. I try to teach my students this all the time. We're trying to learn a certain idea, and we're trying to stay hyper-focused, and a student brings in a question that's not related. So if it's not related, what it's going to do is going to cause a lot of confusion. So shoel and meshiv, ask and answer to make sure that you're answering the questions that are actually on the table, and you're not going like in a divergent fashion and causing, I'm going to call it bilbul, yitbalbel, which means, I'll just say, let's call it confusion. So this is what a student should learn. You want to learn the truth? You have to learn how to hyper-focus, keep the questions, Now, there are always, divergent questions. There's no question about it. You're going to ask questions that are going to be a little bit to the side. But at least it should be as pinpoint as possible to the actual discussion at hand, meaning what's being said. And we also have to learn to stay on focus. So that we're not going to deal with that opinion. We're going to stick with this idea of, and I want to go to the Sanhedrin idea, because how can it be that such an important case comes before the Sanhedrin, and it's so obvious this person is guilty, and if everyone claims that he is guilty, so then what happens? He's let free. And he's not just let free, he's let free immediately. Now that's even a bigger catch, because let me give some background. If I'm on the Sanhedrin, we have 71 people, and we're discussing whether this person is guilty or not. And it looks like a majority of us conclude this guy is innocent. So let's take the vote, and we see he's innocent. And I say innocent, it could be unanimous or it could be majority. So we'll let him go that day. And that's the truth. That's what we should do. We should free him immediately. Okay? He's innocent. There's no reason sitting. There's no jail in Judaism. But in other words, let's not have him confined overnight. But if we think that a majority thinks that he's guilty, and I say majority at this point, so what we do is we wait until the next day to make a final decision, because overnight evidence may come in that will show that he's really innocent. Now, there's some more background, okay? That if you already had a preliminary vote and you said he was innocent, you could change your vote to guilty. But if you put up your hand and said he's guilty, you cannot. One second, the other way, right? It's the other way around. 1 second, am I getting confused now? One of those, I have to go into the here it is. Let me just read, actually, Sanhedrin 40a. Okay. So if yesterday the person taught a reason to make him liable, so if he said he was guilty, he can change his mind and teach for acquitting. But if he said he was able to be acquitted, so then he may not teach to be liable. Okay, so that's how it goes. Okay. So what's going to happen now? If we all decided he's guilty, what we're actually all doing is all saying that he's innocent. And if we're all saying he's innocent, then none of us can change our opinion. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what's happening. So that's why, even though he's guilty and we say, okay, wait till the next day, but in this case, since we all ultimately said, meaning we didn't say it, but the consequences is that he's going to be acquitted and he's innocent, therefore none of us can change our mind, so there's no reason to wait the next day. That's a little crazy, but that's how it's going to work out. But I want to give some more background to that, because a court such as this, whether it's the 23 or the 71, these are courts that can only, that size, deal with capital crimes. A court itself is only a court if it has people who are on the court who look for and try to find and have found something of innocence, as well as those who have found something of guilt. If it's a fully culpable court, the court that says he's fully guilty, it's not a court. It doesn't even fit the criteria of a court. And I want to give you a few verses.
Is this something, Rabbi, that the B'nai Noach can integrate? I mean, we have the positive command to establish courts of justice, right? So
yes. So I want to mention about that. It's very interesting. They're obligated to set up a system of justice that is reasonable. And there's no reason why they can't adopt the Jewish system in certain cases, okay? When it's more strict. They say, you know what? Everyone agrees. We want to do what the Jews do in this case, and therefore we'll take the stricter opinion and we'll take the Jewish view. And there's no reason not to do that. And that's another reason why I mentioned that as a Ben Noach, they can learn so much of the Torah itself, the Shulchan Aruch, that deals with what we call Choshen Mishpat, the laws of justice. There's no reason not to.
There's relevance, yes.
I mean, first of all, they can be with a non-Jew in a Jewish court, right? If a non-Jew wants to take a Jew wants to take a non-Jew to court, he can take them to the non-Jewish court. But the non-Jew can turn around and says, you know what? I believe in the God of Israel. I don't want to go to this idol-worshiping court. I want to go to the Jewish court. Now, even when he goes, he could say, look, I'm a non-Jew. I want to be treated as a non-Jew. Or he can say, whatever the Jewish law is, I want to be treated the same way. And it's up to the court. They can actually do that. So it's quite advantageous for a non-Jew to learn all the laws of Choshen Mishpat if he wants. Not obligated. It's optional. And they could be, who knows, maybe they'll even convert. Who knows? I mean, I'm not trying to promote that. I'm just saying that you never know, because this is a very interesting idea in terms of the court itself, that we believe that even if a non-Jewish court has the same rules and system that we have, we're not allowed to go to that court. I mean, there are going to be certain circumstances where we can. But let's just say outright, the first choice between two Jews is not to go to that court, okay? period. And it has to do with the belief in the power of judgment coming from God as the God of Israel. And therefore, it's likened to idol worship. For a Jew to go to a non-Jewish court
Right, 'cause
outright
they're submitting to, yeah.
without getting permission from the Jewish court. The Jewish court will give permission under certain circumstances, especially today, when we don't have the Sanhedrin. We don't have the power of the Beis Din is not as it was, because we don't have I'll just say a Torah state. We don't have a Torah state, okay? We may have what they say a Jewish style state. And unfortunately, it's like, for those who understand what I'm talking about, there are kosher restaurants that are kosher, and then you have non-kosher restaurants that are called Jewish style. Okay, they serve culturally Jewish food, but nothing about the place is kosher. Anyway, so in Israel today, we have a Jewish style state. It's not a kosher state. It's not a Torah state. Okay, I don't want to go too far off topic. I want to go to the verses in Numbers chapter 35, verses 24 and verse 25.
Numbers chapter 35.
Yeah.
Verse 20 and 25?
Yeah. 24, sorry, chapter 35, verses 24 and 25, yes.
Okay, let me just read that. 24 says, "Then the congregation shall judge between the assailant and the blood avenger on the basis of these judgments." 25, "The congregation shall protect the murderer from the hand of the blood avenger, and the congregation shall return him to the city of refuge to which he had fled, and he shall remain there until the Kohen Gadol who anointed him with the sacred oil dies."
Now, even though the context is dealing with what we call inadvertent, I don't know if that's the correct, but shogeg, inadvertent, we'll call it manslaughter, murder, and there are very, unique laws dealing with this. Nevertheless, it is a capital crime if the person is found to be premeditated, right? That's why he goes to the judges to be decided. What was this person? Did they have brogus? Was the person who he killed inadvertently by accident his enemy or not? Was there, secret threats? Does anybody know? Whatever. You can't just assume every time somebody's axe handle came off that it was a accident. Okay, so this has to be judged. Now it's dealing with the court. Now in Hebrew, I'm sorry, in English, it's the first words in Numbers 24, right, 35:24. It says, "Then the congregation shall judge." In Hebrew, v'shaftu ha'edah. Ha'edah. We'll have to discuss what ha'edah means. And then go to the first words of 25. It says the congregation shall protect. So in Hebrew, v'hitzilu ha'edah. Now, ha'edah is a code word for a minyan, for a minimum of 10. So this happens to be the minimum dayanim, judges in a court that's dealing with capital crime, is 23. I don't want to go into how they get out of this, that there's 23, but the basic idea is that you have a large majority that are there to convict. That's what it means in Hebrew, v'shaftu ha'edah. The congregation shall judge, meaning harshly, for the negative, let's say chayav, to obligate the person. And on the other hand, the first few words of verse 25 is the congregation shall protect. So we know that the Beit Din, the court itself, is made up to be a court. It has to have both aspects. Those judges are looking, they have to look for the truth, to both make it a judgment, a harsh judgment, or to find the person innocent to protect the accused, let's say. So here you have it. So basically, if the court is unanimous in the negative towards the guilty, it's not even a court. It's not even a judgment, and therefore another reason why he should go free, because you didn't put him before a court. Now the truth is, another court could convict this person. Okay, let's say they all said he was guilty. Now, again, there's a lot of levels to this. If you had 23 judges or 71 judges, and there was various reasons why he was guilty. In other words, let's say it's unanimous, they all say he's guilty, but let's say whatever, a third of them say he was guilty for this reason, another third said he was guilty for another reason, and the other third, I'm just using various numbers, doesn't have to be this, the other third said he was guilty for a different reason. They didn't agree on the reason, but they all did agree he's guilty, so that doesn't fit the category that he goes free. They all have to be unanimous for the same reason. And that shows us somebody didn't do their homework. There's no way. You get two Jews in a room, you got three opinions, right? There's no way that they all came to the same conclusion.
Right.
They're looking out.
The fix is in.
Critically, and analyzing the issues. I hope this is becoming a little bit more clear. Yep. All right.
That's to prevent kangaroo courts. Okay, let's go on. I think I pretty much covered a lot of these sources that show you that we have to do these things analytically. Okay, I just want to go back into another idea before we really get into the nitty-gritty. I mentioned already, like in your own personal life, when it comes to, let's say, religious ideas, how do I know there's a God? Does it really make a difference? But what about non-religious? You know, look, anybody who's living a truly religious life, there's no such thing as separation between, right? You have to be honest in business. What are the first questions? What's the first question you're going to be asked when you go to heaven, right? I mean, the first two questions, did you set aside time for studying Torah? But were you honest in business? It sounds like, okay, there's a religious aspect to your judgment, but a very, were you living a moral life? Were you honest in business? And I believe that non-Jews will be asked this question, so be careful, okay? Okay, so I have a list of just, I think, are important ideas that we all deal with in the, I'll call it the secular or physical world, but they all will have ramifications. So in even the spiritual and moral world, right? Let's say you're a first responder and you're coming to a scene of an accident and you have to quickly analyze, right? There's a thing called triage, right? You know who comes first, right? I mean, this is life or death here, right? You're going to analyze the situation, evaluating priorities, and inferring what actions to take and in which order. This is life or death. Another idea, let's say you're a police detective, in this case, maybe even a victim, right? A crime scene analyst, lawyers, judges, juries. These are all, everyday people are part of this, right? You're systematically investigating, interrogating, examining, and evaluating the evidence as you all seek justice. You're weighing, yeah.
Yeah, these are very applicable ideas. What about job interviews, right? You have to, whether you're the one sitting there for the job or you're the new employee, the possible employer, right? So the applicant preparing for a job interview, thinking about how to explain his or her particular skills and experience in a way that will be relevant and of value to the prospective employer. Of course, the employer also, is this person the right person to, dedicate, a lot of our team secrets and our resources to? Okay. What about a master sergeant or a captain working out tactical plans for a dangerous military mission? I mean, whether you're on SWAT or whether you're a street cop who, has to make what do they call it, a split-second decision. And this is very interesting because I think this is very relevant today. We're not all scientists, and this is the biggest thing I can only claim about myself with the raging debate of different mitigating medicines to use in such a pandemic. But let's say a team of scientists working with great precision through complex experiment, right? Through a complex experiment in an effort to gather and analyze data, right? We're all we're all living through a great experiment. I have to say that. And there are people who are much better attuned to figuring out data than I am. And I just want to mention, because I did write a list of who I thought are pretty good at this. I'm just, without, we're not hopefully not going to violate any YouTube issues here, but there's a Dr. John Campbell from England. He seems to be able to at least analyze and give over without telling anybody what to do, but making suggestions about this issue. There's a Dr. Z. He's actually an Egyptian guy, Z-Dog MD. His name is Dr. Zubin Damania. Anyway, this is just from the secular point of view. And also, just, again, I'm just going to list a few more people that I feel today you can use to help you think through. They analyze what's going on, and I think that they're pretty moderate, and they're not taking any extreme views. And maybe people will disagree. I'll just mention their names briefly. Russell Brand, he's quite quite a funny guy. Jordan Peterson, Dennis Prager. Okay, now let me get into the rabbis. Okay, that's the secular, right? You want to think about how to analyze situations politically, medically, whatever. Those are my suggestions. But using wise rabbis, people who are experienced in dealing with people who ask questions a lot. And listen, I think I mentioned this before. As a rabbi, if someone comes to me with a question, if I don't ask questions back, which is another idea that Rosh Hashanah says, you ask a Jew a question, you expect an answer
with another question.
A question being asked in return. So how can you analyze anything without knowing all the facts? There's no way when the person said, "Can I ask you a question?" Presented everything. If they presented everything in a certain order, they probably could probably come to the answer on their own. You need to draw out from them things that they haven't thought of. Hopefully, you will help them come to their own answers. That's the greatest. If you just regurgitate and tell them this is the answer, it's not going to make a lasting impression. The lasting impression is when they can come to that proper answer on their own. So I'm going to mention a few rabbis, and I hope none of them are on any kind of list of controversies. But anyway, so Rabbi Michael Skobach from Jews for Judaism, he has a knack, the way he can analyze something. And you know that these rabbis are all asking questions. The best way to give over a class is to ask a question, right? I mean, the clear card does that all the time. He begins by asking questions. I wish I could do that, right? But anyway, that's one. Rabbi Tovia Singer, he usually also asks lots of questions during his presentation.
Oh, yeah, he thrives on questions, sure.
Rabbi Manis Friedman, he always presents some kind of, counterintuitive, thing that arouses people's thoughts. Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, Rabbi Akiva Tatz. These are all very highly intelligent, thinking people. And the last one, it's like the most dear of all, Rabbi Yitzhak Breitowitz, right?
Oh, yes. He does so much with you on Yibbenei, and you can tell he's so profound. I've never heard him asking questions often, though, but he has such a gift for sharing profound concepts in very few words.
Yeah, so you'll see, if you now try to pay attention, that he'll make certain statements that he'll call assumptions, and then he'll tear them apart. He'll begin, why is it in this order? He'll ask lots of questions, and he'll help you hopefully come to the whole idea is to draw your own conclusions, to come out, because the main idea is think for yourself. Think for yourself. This is one of the things that I guess is really irks, especially Christians, right? We ask so many questions, and we try to get people to think for themselves. So one of the things Rosh Hashiva always asked is, what is the first question your kids asked you? Like really deep thinking. And this is something you would immortalize, this question. It was like a big deal, okay? Parents, I remember my kid took his first step, or I remember when he first rode his bike, or I remember when first time he hit a ball. No, the most important thing, right, is the first really deep question your kid was able to ask. It really shows you that he is a thinking person. Happens to be in this week's parsha, right? Moses is wondering why is the bush burning and yet it's not being consumed. These are the questions one should ask, right? It's something about yeshivas. I mean, that's what they teach you in yeshivas, how to think critically. So who usually got to marry the Rosh Yeshiva's daughter, the dean of the school, his daughter? The one that was able to stump the rabbi, the one that was able to ask the questions that nobody could answer. That is like the top of the list. So these are all very important ideas. Even though I mentioned already, there's different sections of the Shulchan Aruch, and one of them is Choshen Mishpat, dealing with the laws of the law, civil laws and whatnot. So there's everyday life, there's marriage, then there's like more mystical ideas of what we call what's permissible, not permissible in terms of food. And anyway, the idea here is that every Torah scholar knows, and there's no reason we shouldn't share this with the world, right? Even though there's these 4 sections, we all say that there's a 5th. It's unwritten. It's called seichel. It's called seichel. You have to use your own, what we call shikul hadat, the ability to weigh things out. That's why you have to ask the questions. You have to understand where the person's coming from, right? The famous story of these 2 people that came to the rabbi with chickens. Now, the chickens seem to be not kosher. Why? Because of some blemish that the women saw on some blood clot that developed. The question is, was it from before the slaughtering? Was it after the slaughtering? So anyway, these 2 women came. It was the exact same problem. The student saw the rabbi. The rabbi said to the student, to the first woman coming, no, this is not kosher, and you're going to have to throw it out. And the second woman came with the exact same problem, and he said, it's not a problem, enjoy. So the student said, Rabbi, what's going on here? He says, you don't understand. The problem is a rabbinic issue. We know that rabbinic issue, we can be lenient under certain circumstances. The first woman was a wealthy woman, and there's no reason she can't afford a new chicken.
That's right.
And she should buy the new chicken.
Mm-hmm.
The second woman was a poorer woman, or a poor one, very like scraping.
She would have went hungry if he made the same ruling. Yeah.
And it's a rabbinic issue, and then this rabbinic issue, the rabbis already declared that when it's a major loss, then you can be lenient. Okay, so it's because the rabbi used his seichel. He knew. Now, if he didn't know, he could ask those questions. He could ask. Apparently, he knew the women personally.
Makes all the difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just looking at my notes, see what I covered, what I didn't cover here. Most important, so when you sit down to analyze something, to even ask a question, there are a list of order of the questions. So we call it what, meaning to define. Why, deliberate, we'll talk about it, and then how to apply. So the first thing is what. We always spoke about define your terms, right? That's the first thing. Before you get into in depth, whether it's with a chavruta, in an argument, or a debate, whatever it is, define what is the issue. Before you even begin to argue about it, know your terms. Then what about why? Why is it important to me? Is it at all important to me? What are the consequences? What's going to come out of this? Is it matter or does it not matter? And then figure out how to apply it, right? How do I use this and integrate it into my life? What am I going to do about it? Okay, this is like, make it a habit. This, until they become second nature, this would be very important. Another thing is to look for inconsistencies, look for contradictions, right? And these are his words. Open your eyes and mind to the irregularities and inconsistencies of life. Don't be passive. If you see a contradiction, point it out and ask. Unearthing contradictions and incongruities opens a window for better understanding. Be sensitive to them. Mm-hmm. Okay? Questioning also protects you from being susceptible to all kinds of manipulation. I mean, this is really I mean, we call the mass media, right? What do they call it? You know what I mean. The media is,
Hypnotists.
and this is what he says, right? In today's world, this is written, years ago. There's always someone eager to fool you into buying something you don't need or accepting an idea that's not true. I mean, I was so disturbed. I saw a very short documentary. It was entitled "Conspiracy Theories?" Like question mark, like, okay, interested. What is that little documentary about? It was about the cartels of 100 years ago. All of the manufacturers of light bulbs, they all got together and they made an agreement. See, light bulbs would last for a long time. And they made an agreement that they would diminish the quality of the light bulb so people would have to replace them. Really sad. It's really sad when you think about it. It disturbed me so much because it went on to talk about our cell phones today. I mean, there's no reason these cell phones can't last 10, 20 years, whatever it is. But they made a change. They used to be able to replace batteries. Now you can't replace a battery, and basically you have to replace the whole phone. I mean, they're really interested in getting.
Rabbi, I saw that in the auto industry, where in the 80s they started to develop something called a specialty tool, and what it did is unless you took your car to the garage, you couldn't get that fixed because you needed this specialty tool in order to get at the part, and it became a concealment thing, and then they started to design breakdowns into the product, and our great grandparents bought cast iron frying pans for a reason. They lasted more than a lifetime, right?
Right.
A huge.
I mean, well, it just disturbed me so great, to do my own investigation. First of all, is this true? Did these changes take place? Was there an agreement amongst organizations? And guess what? It opened a whole can of worms. It's not just them. It wasn't just the light bulbs, and it wasn't just the cell phones. Like you said, it's in almost every industry. It's in the fashion industry, right? I mean, it's everywhere. It's momish everywhere.
Shelf life, design wear.
And then you have to question. I mean, drum roll, please. I mean, you have to question who's really responsible for climate. If climate, I don't even know the word, to be concerned about the climate, then I would want to fix these issues with these tech issues. I mean, first of all, they're ripping everyone off, if it's true, right? And they take us for fools and suckers. And who's really responsible for whatever problems people are saying exists in the climate? I'm not even debating whether it's man-made or not. Let's just say we are responsible to make sure that we don't pollute and make the world a worse place than we came in.
Valid point, sure.
Let's agree on that, right? So what's going on here? We're just giving them so much money to continue to destroy our environment and not hold them at all responsible? They should be the first ones responsible, in all honesty. Okay, but this is called, you have to analyze. Don't believe me. Check it out. And every one of those people, forget about the rabbis, of course, they'll tell you, check it out. But that list of people, they're the ones who are specifically telling you, don't believe me, check out what I'm telling you. And that's why I specifically mentioned those people, because that's what they all claim. Okay? And questioning also protects you from being susceptible to all kinds of manipulation. We read that idea. Do not blindly accept what people or the media tell you. Think it through yourself. Ask your questions and draw your own conclusions.
Don't bite on any fish lures.
Yeah. We said, and I hope it's true, right, that nobody ever died from asking a question. But the point of asking these questions is to work on discovering their answers. That's the whole point. Getting clarity, right? The 5-finger clarity. Just like you have 5 fingers on this one hand, that's how you have to know everything. So getting clarity does take time. And that's what I want to tell you. Before we started, we talked about this idea that you can get inundated, a lot of information. You need time to pause and to allow the information to fester,
digest and ingest.
Process,
yes.
Process, because that will be where the questions will come up. As it settles, you'll see the inconsistencies or where the questions are. As I mentioned before, Rev. Noach Weinberg said, always make sure before you go to sleep at night, you have a question. Ask the question. Speak it out. Think about it. Now, this is a metaphysical idea that in Judaism, we believe we have different levels of our soul. The higher level of our soul, let's say, departs, disconnects from our lower part of the soul, and it joins up, or it's always been joined up, but it has less background noise, less white noise because you're sleeping, and it's able to, let's see with clarity what had been bothering you. That's why you asked the question. So then when you wake up in the morning, subconsciously, depends on what level you are, the higher conscious level person you are, maybe even consciously you'll realize you have an answer, but at least subconsciously, this will help you in life with an answer. So again, questions are good. Nobody ever died. I'm sure people have died in their sleep, but I don't think they died from the question.
The reality is many people have died from not asking questions.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Anyway, this is part of the thrill of living. As we say, it's the journey, right? The journey is amazing, right? You may not be aware of the answers. You may not. Sometimes the question is so much better. You'll hear a rabbi say, that question is gold. I don't have an answer for it, but I don't think I'm ever going to forget that question. That's amazing. You hear that? That's how important questions are. It's the first step in gaining greater clarity and confidence. Basically, sit down, introspect, see what important unresolved questions you have inside yourself. Don't let them fester. You have to keep asking. Make a list, carry it with you. Keep these questions in mind, readily available, and when you meet somebody who might actually have some insight, ask them the question. Right? It's a business question. Wait till you meet someone who's successful. You have a rabbi question. Wait until you have, I'm talking about not where you can ask them online or in public or, through the email, but when you are presented with 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 2 minutes with a rabbi, you can ask them the question. All right? Listen, if your business was faltering, you wouldn't just sit around losing money. You would do whatever it was that you could to identify the problem and try to solve it. Take life just as seriously. Figure out what's confusing you and work to resolve it. So let's finish with this one idea. I mentioned already, this is what we do in yeshiva. That's why there's somebody at the night seder who walks around. He's called the Shoel HaMeshiv. That's our title here. He's there to ask the questions, and hopefully, if he does his job, he'll ask you questions to help you resolve whatever it is. Read Rashi again. What did Rashi say? And then hopefully you'll come to your own understanding. So learning the text of the Torah entails in asking investigative, analytic questions, right? As we do with the Kli Yakar Shir. What's the anomaly? What is strange about the verse? Why is it in this order? Why is that word being used? Why is that word spelled differently than it is anywhere else? These are all questions that have to be asked, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Now, Rabbi, but what do we do as B'nai Noach if we come to a conclusion that is contrary to traditional Jewish thought and can't reconcile it?
No, so I think this is just off the top of my head. You should ask a qualified rabbi, is this or is this not? Now, you might not be satisfied, and you can ask another rabbi, but when you go to the second rabbi, you have to tell him, I've already asked so-and-so, and he has not been able to give me proof. He just says it's not consistent. I'm looking for proof. Whichever rabbi you go to, you're asking him, if this is not consistent, show me what Judaism says. That shows you this is not consistent. Once you have a statement, and I'm not talking about from that rabbi, I'm talking about the rabbi is quoting you some earlier conclusive statement that's written in Chazal, that the rabbis for thousands of years have held this way. So then you can conclude it's true. It's inconsistent with Judaism. Somehow there's a fault. I'm going to go up against thousands of years of thought. The burden of proof's now on me to prove that it really is. Well, good luck finding it. I mean, if the rabbi is able to show you consistently, this is how Chazal have thought, that idea is inconsistent, so then you just give up your fight. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't struggle. You should still be struggling. What's inside you that's preventing you from seeing it? And that could force you to go deeper into those sources that the rabbi showed you. Maybe he read it wrong. Maybe, it's possible, right? He's just telling you that. That's why you can go to more than one rabbi. But when you go to the second rabbi, you must tell him. I mean, look, depends what you're asking. It's halacha. It's a question whether you can even go to a second rabbi. But if you think the first rabbi is making a mistake, you go to the first rabbi, the second rabbi, and you say, look, I went to a rabbi, you don't have to mention the name, and he told me this is the answer to the halachic question. And again, hopefully that rabbi will ask you a few questions, and he'll say, yes, he's 100% right, or, yeah, he made a mistake. And that's fine, but you have to reveal the fact that you went to this rabbi. If you're asking a philosophical question, there's no reason why not to ask what the rabbi thinks about it. But it's not a bad idea to say to him, listen, I already spoke to this one rabbi, and he tells me that Reb Samson Raphael Hirsch said these words. Now, that doesn't mean that Reb Samson Raphael Hirsch is the end-all, right? He lived in a certain period of time. He was addressing a certain type of people. If it's a philosophical idea, it may be a legitimate view under certain circumstances, and that may be what you need to hear. That's what he meant. But go ahead. You were going to say something?
No. I'm following what you're saying. It means a lot. Like, nobody wants to question halakha. It's just when we start to dive into the text, often we see a lot of similar questions amongst B'nai Noach, and they become repetitive or easy enough to answer because we've heard the answers enough times. But there are many difficult things, especially in Torah, that I've been at this for a lot of years. I can't seem to reconcile. Like, one of the biggest difficulties for myself is the Torah Calendar, and the numbers in early Genesis from chapters 5 and 10. They don't coincide. And how do you reconcile that's there in the Torah?
So you don't mean the calendar. You're talking about the historical chronology.
The chronology, exactly. The chronology and the timeline. My bent is more on tangible historical evidence, archaeology.
Look, okay, so it may not fit historical evidence. That because that evidence may also be faulty. What we do is we rely on, I'm just going to throw out, Seder Olam or the Rambam, and there's other source material to use that you should, if you're so interested, compare. And there could be what we call machlokas, right, where there's 180 to 80 years missing, okay? And you can understand there's a machlokas in Chazal. If you're trying to resolve the secular historical chronology to the Torah chronology, you may not in this lifetime, okay? But you will have to decide, this is what the Torah says, okay?
That should be undisputed.
When the Torah says it could mean this or could mean that, based on whether you're using the Seder Olam, or at least, people say, oh, I know it's true. I know that I heard it said by that person, but I don't know if it's true. In other words, I'm repeating what I heard from somebody. I'm not going to tell you what I heard. I'm not going to tell you that what I'm saying is true. What I'm saying is that I heard it. You have to believe me that I heard it. That doesn't make it true, okay? So when we talk about Chazal, same thing in Midrash, for example. This is what the Midrash says. Am I going to debate whether it's true or sometimes they use hyperbole and exaggeration. Maybe it's a parable. The parable is true. Are all the facts 100% true in the same way that we understand facts? Maybe not. They're all true, but they may mean something that I'm not aware of. Okay, so if you're talking about chronology, it's just beyond us to think that people lived hundreds of years, right? And whether it's 1,000 years, 700 years, 600, it's just hard for us to imagine. But if the Torah says it, so you have to say, you don't have to, but I would suggest, according to the Torah.
You can't say it does not say
true.
it when in fact it does. Sure.
That's true. What is the Torah trying to tell me? Then I'll have to figure that out. That's now my life's mission. If the Torah is telling me the person lived 400 years, so why does it want me to know that? Okay? As opposed to trying to figure out, is it true, is it not true, and never get anywhere.
Right.
So at least according to the Torah, it's a true fact that the Torah says it. What does the Torah want me to know by knowing that? Now I'm going to have to figure out, let's say metaphysically, what is the lesson? It doesn't want me to think outside the box so much that I believe that people live 400 years. That may be true, but that's probably not the point of the Torah telling you that. The point of the Torah telling you that is for some other reason. That perhaps, I'm going to get into metaphysical, maybe it was a reincarnated soul, maybe there was an overlap between this person's life and that person's life, maybe whatever it is, you have to figure it out. You have to try to ask the question. Ask the question.
Thank you, Rabbi.
The question sometimes is greater than the answer itself. So I want to go into this idea of a story. He ends with a story, but before that he just says that the yeshiva is the ideal place to learn the skill of analyzing and asking probing questions. The guidebook is the Talmud, the world's greatest manual on questions and answers. That is exactly what the Gemara does. You have, let's say, the 5 books of Moses, the Tanakh. There are, I'm going to call them stories. They're not just stories. They're instructions for living that is cryptically written in story form. And then you have the Mishnah, which is, the oral Torah written again in cryptic form. But the Talmud, the Gemara itself, is questions. They want to know, where did you know this from? It's just unbelievable. The question, this is exactly what's happening. It's an analysis of every statement that was ever made. There's nothing you cannot find. That's a double negative. Everything can be found in the Talmud. So the Talmud is a repository of brilliant Jewish minds digging for contradictions and asking reams of incisive questions. The Jewish people have developed this form of study into a fine art. It's no wonder that many of the sharpest minds of the Jewish world have come out of yeshiva study halls. Yeah. So here's a story. Okay, guy gets on a train. Okay, he's traveling. He's a scholar. He learned in yeshiva, and he's going from a place called Odessa. He's traveling from Odessa to Moscow. Now he gets on the train and he finds an empty seat. Wow, what a machaya! What a great thing! Find an empty seat. But you know what? At the next stop, a young man sits down next to him. So what does the scholar? He looks at the young man and he thinks, well, this doesn't look like a peasant. A peasant, I guess, would dress a certain way. He doesn't look like one. Now, and if he's not a peasant, so then he probably comes from this district. Okay. And if he comes from this district, he must be Jewish. Maybe he didn't look so Jewish, but I can figure he's probably Jewish, because after all, this is a Jewish district. Now, if he's a Jew, where could he be going? Obviously, they're heading towards Moscow. Now, I'm the only one in our district that has permission to travel to Moscow. But one second, right outside of Moscow, now, so he knows already that he's the only one in his district that has permission to travel. So, but there is a little place outside of Moscow that one could visit without permission. So it must be that that's where he's going. So he already uses his analytic mind. Where's he from? Yeah. Is he? Okay. So it's called Samvet, and you don't need special permission to travel there. But why would he be going there, he asked himself. Well, he must be going to visit one of the Jewish families there. He already thought he was Jewish. Must be a Jewish family there. But you know how many Jewish families there are there? There's only 2. And who are they? The Bernsteins and the Steinbergs. Well, The Bernsteins right now are experiencing many overwhelming challenges, so he's probably not going to see the Bernsteins. It must then be the Steinbergs. Now, why is he going? Well, the Steinbergs have two daughters, so maybe he's one of their son-in-laws, right? Now, if he is, which daughter do you think he might marry if he's already going to be their son-in-law? So he thinks, well, the Sarah, she's already married to a nice lawyer from Budapest, and the other, Esther, is married to a peddler from I can't even pronounce the city, Zitmir. So it must be Sarah's husband, which means that his name is Alexander Cohen, if I'm not mistaken. But does he come from Budapest? But if he comes from Budapest, with all the anti-Semitism there, he must have changed his name to be accepted into university. So what would be the Hungarian name of Cohen? He thinks Kovac. Oh, Kovac. He must have earned a doctorate from that university. So at this point, the Torah scholar turns to him and says, how do you do, Mr. Kovacs? Imagine every step till he gets to this point in his own mind. And the guy says, very well, thank you. But how did you know my name? So the scholar says, well, it was obvious.
If you're Sherlock Holmes. Yeah.
How obvious. If you think deeply and methodically, and you really think through the methods, so there's no question, you come to the right answer, just like he did on this seemingly superfluous, unnecessary, doesn't make or change my life one bit. Imagine taking all those issues that really make or break your entire life. Is there a God? Does it make a difference? Is it the God of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or is it some other God? And I'm serious when I say that. We're talking about the creator of the universe, the one who revealed himself at Mount Sinai to the Jewish people and gave them this information. Is that the God I want to believe in or not? Is it going to make a difference in my life? Am I going to be a Noahide because these things make sense, or am I going to be a Noahide because I believe in the revelation at Mount Sinai and they make sense? In other words, am I going to take it beyond the 7? Am I going to take it one step further, and it's going to make or break whether I go to heaven or not, okay, as a non-Jew. Anyway, so that's I always mention, you got to do your own homework. You got to investigate yourself, because what we're doing is just giving the information. The book is behind me over my left shoulder. You can find it online, usually in the comments, but in the description box. You can listen to all of Rabbi Noah Weinberg's classes. There are other people, other students of his that have also given the 48 Ways classes, and these are it's enjoy the journey.
Wow, Rabbi, thank you so much. That's beautiful. Well said. I mean, may we all learn to grow and ask the right questions to get the information we need if we're facing any problems or difficulties. My weekly Rocky Mountain readings, we've been reading a guide for the perplexed by the Rambam, and that is so full of arguments and debates, or just points to consider. And the reality is, you can just tell it's a gentleman such as the Rambam, asked and pondered so many questions, and you could see how it made his life who he was, and important stuff. And you got almost, like I said, like Sherlock Holmes there in the end. Now, folks, I'm placing a link there in the chat room, and this link is for Yibbanay's doing their year-end fundraiser. They're more than 50% of where they need to be, and I just want to encourage everybody out there, if you are able to help or support in any way, shape, or form, Yibbanay, they do such wonderful work. I know that Rabbi Poston, it's all he does is help people in Jerusalem, and they're always doing kind works there, and more than that, loads of videos you can follow on their Yibbanay YouTube site. Him and Rabbi Yitzhak Breitowitz, profound teacher. So much there for you to dive in and learn from. And I just want to encourage you, if you can, please click on that link, check it out, and don't be afraid to help them with their year-end fundraising, because this is what they do to keep themselves going for another year. And we want to encourage Rabbi Poston for continually working with us. We made it to 45 now. Next week is technically calendar, I think we're New Year or so, but Rabbi, Hashem willing, are you okay or on? Is your schedule allowed to do part 45 tentative?
Yeah, we're fine. Yeah, it's not New Year's for us, but
right.
I know it's a new financial year, so we'll celebrate. We'll celebrate it, not in the way that you guys do, but by a clean books, right? Starting from.
All right. So Hashem willing, folks, we're going to be back same time next week with part 45 of the 48 Ways to Wisdom. We're almost there. It's just such profound stuff. If you've got any questions or points, go back, check it out, or dive into the Pirkei Avos chapter 6, and you'll see for yourself exactly these profound steps. And I want to thank Rabbi Poston for doing this Beyond the Seven series and taking the time over more than a year now we've been at this, and we're coming down to the end. Part 45 next week, folks. So until then, have a wonderful, wonderful week.
It's